I'm Ashton Addison from BlockWest Capital for InvestmentPitch Media and the Crypto Coin Show. And today on Blockchain Interviews, once again with Alejandro Gutierrez, Operations Lead at DeFactor. Alejandro, welcome back to the show. It is a pleasure to see you again.
Ashton, thank you very much for having us back. It's a pleasure to be here, and great that we having the chance to reconnect.
Likewise, and so much has happened since we spoke in the middle of 2021. A lot of ups and a lot of downs in the market as well. I know your team has done a lot to move the DeFactor project forward. And for the viewers that didn't see our first interview, let's just start off by getting a recap and an overview of what are the solutions that DeFactor is working on, and then we can dive into the details.
Perfect. Yeah, so DeFactor is focusing on redefining financial services using DeFi as a vehicle. What we want to achieve is kind of optimizing the way that companies are bringing or are transacting in the DeFi space, especially companies that have or deal with real world assets. Mm-hmm. And they are focused kind of in the traditional financial space. So one of the things is kind of enhancing and optimizing all the processes that currently are a bit clunky and are a huge operational burden. Just make all that easier for companies just to tap into all these liquidity pools that are currently in the DeFi market.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And with real world assets, there's so much untapped capital and money that's locked in things that really can't be used. And I'm hoping that blockchain and tokenization can really help create liquidity and accessibility for capital that's locked in these kind of assets. And I know that this is part of your goals as well. And I would love to hear the rationale behind, obviously this is a huge problem, but what inspired you to take on the problem?
Well, I think one of the reasons why we focus on kind of solving these problems is like traditionally we have been working in the DeFi space for probably 2 years, a little bit more than that. We were one of the first movers in the real world asset space. We worked with the likes of Maker. We were actually the first pilot that Maker did with a logistic invoice, actually. So basically collateralizing a logistics invoice as an asset and just taking funds from Maker and being able to finance this type of operations. And also with Centrifuge, right? That is one of the first movies that real world. So when we're doing all these transactions and we're placing assets into the DeFi space, we realized that operationally was a huge burden, right? You needed to kind of change your processes, and traditionally in the financial space, processes are complex because there are so many parties, and you need to actually be sure of the reconciliation piece. Mm-hmm. So we say, look, this is a fantastic opportunity. As you say, there are a lot of markets that can be tapped if we put some layer, this technological layer that is going to be make easier for companies just to tap into the DeFi space and use that source of liquidity as an alternative. It's also liquidity exactly the same as they do with traditional fiat at the moment, right? Mm-hmm. And that's where this is coming from. You touched a really interesting point about a liquidity that is trapped, right? And we see that all the time. There are multiple applications that DeFi can help solving. One of them is the trade finance space. Trade finance is extremely required in international commerce. As they call it, is the fuel of international commerce. So if there is no trade finance, there is a huge impact on transactions around the whole world. And DeFi has the potential actually to solve that issue, right? Like there is a gap at the moment of $1.5 trillion that is growing with COVID, and that DeFi can probably have that as a niche to help, right? Mm-hmm. Also, you have some luxury goods that are trapped there. Like one of the examples that I'm always giving is whiskey. So I'm based in Ireland, so love whiskey. I know the culture of the whiskey. but you have this cask that in these warehouses, right? And even though they have value, the value is increasing dramatically year after year. They're still, or the producers can still not tap into that asset that is there, and that's one of the things that we are focusing, and we are willing to just help the small distilleries to just like extract some of the liquidity out of those assets that are parked doing nothing in a way.
Mm-hmm. Great point, Alejandro. And I want to dive a little bit further into these real world assets and how exactly we tap into the liquidity. You know, I was thinking, as an example, having a building, you know, there's been discussions about, you know, capital expenditures on large buildings and how do we tap into that. And I feel like this craze in NFTs with digital art and also real world art that's also has NFT versions of it is one kind of way that people are taking real world assets and tokenizing it. And I know you spoke about the liquidity pools, the partners you have, and the liquidity pools are getting really large already. But I'm curious, with these real world assets, is there a tokenization of an NFT that allows you to then utilize that on the internet, or is it without NFTs and it's just the liquidity pools? Maybe you can explain that a little bit further.
No, yeah, definitely. Like NFTs a huge component out of what we do, right? Because as you mentioned, real world assets need to be digitized in order to be locked in those liquidity pools. So it's funny because there was this huge boom about NFTs, right, in the last year or so. And finally, I've been working with NFTs for the last 2 years, but more in the financial, as a financial vehicle to extract liquidity from the DeFi space. Mm-hmm. So just as you're saying, like, look, there is a digitization of a real world asset, right? And that NFT that is created, right, allow us just to lock that asset into a liquidity pool to extract crypto assets, right? You call it stable coins, DAI, USDC, USDT, or whatever other one that you can. And after the loan is repaid, right, there are multiple options of what you can do with that asset, right? One is just release it back into the owner, and the owner will decide, look, I want to just use it again as a vehicle for financial purposes, or I can just put it in a secondary market, sell it, or just put it back into his wallet or her wallet and just keep it there as an investment, right? Mm-hmm. And out of that, you'll be seeing more and more. We're working in a project that basically is a marketplace for real world art, for physical art, but every single one of those pieces is tokenized, right? So it's a token that is linked directly into the real painting, and the idea will be for us to be able to provide liquidity into every single one of those assets that is there, right? Because the NFT is already created. So that's super simple. You just take that NFT, lock it into a liquidity pool, and then extract funds when the person is repaying back. You just release the NFT, and the person can just, as I mentioned, do whatever they want with that NFT. Yeah. So the opportunities are huge, and I think it's important just to highlight that real world assets are going to be extremely critical for the DeFi space from the growth point of view. I don't think we're going to be achieving growth or the growth that we want in the DeFi space if we don't bring real world assets into it, right? Like a crypto asset is what is it right now, $2-3 trillion dollars market cap. That's tiny, right? That's nothing compared with the real world, right? And especially in the DeFi space, you have locked 200 billion. As I mentioned previously, the gap on the trade finance is $1.5 trillion. So if we want to just be a realistic alternative, a financial alternative for the people out there, the market needs to grow, and I think real world assets is just a critical one. Real estate, for sure. That's as soon as DeFi managed to grasp a process that you can bring real estate and tokenize real estate, that there are some pilots happening. It's looking good, but I think we are not there yet, and that's one of the things that in DeFactor are going to be working at the end of the year as well.
Great information, Alejandro. And I feel like 2021 was really the year of DeFi, but also of NFTs as well, but more specifically NFTs with digital art and getting artists and people that are not in the financial services or not in cryptocurrency, you know, they're artists and they're creators into the cryptocurrency world through this tokenization. And I'm curious on your thoughts on when the next wave of NFTs or tokenization is going to happen for real estate, for these other real world assets, where it is the year where real world assets explode and all of these other different types of assets move into NFTs in the blockchain, just as art did.
Well, I'm hoping that this year is going to allow us to do that, because the more mainstream in a way NFTs are becoming, people are going to understand better what are the different uses of NFTs, right? As you mentioned, there's a huge boom on the art side. Digital creators just bringing these NFTs, selling them for huge prices. But I think the more people are starting to understand all the capabilities for the NFTs, the more of these real world uses and business cases are going to be pushed hard into the whole mainstream and into the fintech space, right? But there is a huge willingness from traditional systems to start just understanding NFTs, how it works. We see it. Like we're getting contact regularly with a lot of these institutions that say, okay, what are you guys doing? This is super interesting. How can we implement, do pilots? And that's starting telling you, right? Like they are starting looking at the DeFi space, they're starting looking at tokenization of assets. And when these big players are starting to get involved into it, you know that there's a big chance that will be happening soon. A prediction, we assume at the end of the year, we might have a more mainstream real world assets play and probably an increase in the volume of real world assets tokenized in the DeFi space.
Amazing. Yeah, that would be incredible. And I feel like having large players in the space jump on board with this as well, that have a lot of assets under management, or they have a huge network effect of, you know, protocol and large communities to spread the word. I feel like that would help. And I'm wondering if you're already working with any of these layer one protocols or many of these huge blockchain platforms to help accelerate this.
Yeah, definitely. We have been working, let's say, or trying to attract what is happening in the real world asset space in Ethereum mainly, and trying to attract or create some buzz in some other layer one protocols. As I mentioned to you, we got an award from the guys on Algorand, because they're interested in having real world assets tapping into liquidity pools that are there. They're fairly early on that journey, but they understand how critical real world assets are going to be for them. So that's something we're going to be working all this year. And the idea will be just being able to tap into all the liquidity that the Algorand has that is big enough, right? We have some other ones that I cannot disclose yet, but a similar approach. But I think for DeFactor, the importance is whatever there is liquidity that can help, right? Traditional use of sources, we will try to just be there and help those asset originators that are in need for alternative sources of funding, right?
Definitely. And I know you mentioned you're already working with a lot of these large partners. In terms of the product itself, growing the ecosystem, what is the team's main goals for the next 6 months and throughout 2022 in getting to the next stage for DeFactor?
Yeah, so the goals, so from the funding perspective, the idea would be to place more than $50 million by the end of the year. We started actually onboarding our first asset originator in December. That is Console Freight. They have been in the space for quite a while. Have one of the most or longest standing pool in Centrifuge, and they have worked as well with MakerDAO. So they have already placed around $2 million in the last month, and that's growth that you can see. You can just go into our dashboard in our webpage, and you can see actually what is happening from the funding perspective. So that's a figure that we have in mind. We've probably been a bit conservative, but we probably like to under promise and over deliver. Then we have we're onboarding our second asset originator at the end of Q1. It's an Irish company that in the invoice discounting space, and they want to really looking forward into tapping into the DeFi space, because what happened with the DeFi space as well is allow them some flexibility on the potential services that they can provide, right? Sometimes traditional money tends to be really structured in the way that you're going to be placing it. DeFi will allow them a little bit more flexibility, and that flexibility will allow them also just to kind of try different products that there is a huge need in the market, and that they cannot provide with traditional money, right? So that's another things that we have. From the technology point of view, doing finalizing integrations with Centrifuge. Huge news. Centrifuge is one of the biggest partners. They got one of the last parachains, so actually the last parachain in the Polkadot auction. So congratulations, Centrifuge. And that's huge news for us as well, because that means that we'll start working with them into the Polkadot ecosystem. We are aligning a lot of our strategies with the Ashton Centrifuge in that regard. We need to be where they are. So we'll be just starting tapping into Polkadot pretty soon, and that will consume a big chunk of our tech resources as well. Mm-hmm. And by the end of the year, the idea will be just have at least 6 or 7 asset originators that are tapping into a liquidity pool in the Centrifuge ecosystem, either in the existing Ethereum or in Polkadot, right? That will make our lives way easier, because you don't have to pay for the cost of gas.
Yeah,
it's one of the most critical components. So yeah, you see, like it's a pack on the ancillary side, like marketing. We're bringing huge push. We brought a new CMO. Super experienced person will be just giving some more information to the community pretty soon. Someone that has worked with one of the largest layer ones in the space. Mm-hmm. And the idea will be just to have a huge marketing push this year. And also we are creating our labs division, and our labs division is going to be that research and development, that let's call it like the funky side of DeFactor, because we are in a traditional space, real world assets, but we understand that other more risky side is needed as well, and there are a lot of different pros that can come from that side of the business. So yeah, as you can see, we have gone beginning of 2021. We were just structuring what we're going to do as a company, and I think we have now a clear path that is going to be presented as well to the whole community pretty soon.
Amazing, Alejandro. Tons of updates. Glad you mentioned the Centrifuge partnership. I know we were discussing that in our last video. That was before they won the parachain offering, and I think that Centrifuge has great fundamentals, so I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out with DeFactor, and thank you for all those other updates as well. And for the viewers, for them to follow along as these updates roll out, and to learn more about the DeFactor ecosystem, token, and the community, what's the best way for them to learn more?
Now, most of the things that you will find in our webpage, that is www.defactor.com. Over there you will be able to find Telegram links, Discord, LinkedIn, and any other social media. So that's what I would suggest to everybody do. And yeah, and regularly we'll be just posting a lot of updates in the webpage as well.
Sounds great. I will leave all those social links you mentioned and the DeFactor.com ecosystem website all in the description box below. Thank you so much, Alejandro, for coming back on the show. I really appreciate it. All the best with DeFactor throughout the rest of this year and until we speak again. And let's follow up in the near future.
Awesome, Ashton. Thank you very much for having us again. It's a pleasure to be here. And yeah, let's keep in touch.